Welcome, and thank you for joining us this evening for the first episode of the Fall 2023 series of St. Ben's at Home. My name is Lisa Miller, and I am the Assistant Director of Engagement Strategy. Tonight, I begin our time together by sharing our land acknowledgement. Both the College of St. Benedict and St. John's University occupy the original homelands of the Dakota and Anishinaabe peoples. We honor, respect, and acknowledge the indigenous peoples forcibly removed from this territory, whose connection remains today. St. Benedict's Monastery in St. John's Abbey previously operated boarding schools for Native children. Now, students, faculty, and staff are working to repair relationships with our Native Nation neighbors. Thank you. Toward the end of tonight's episode, there will be time for questions. So if you have anything to ask Sister Karen, please click the Ask a Question button at the bottom of your screen to submit your question. Please note, to do so, you may need to exit out of the full screen view to see the Ask a Question button. The session will be recorded and posted on our Alum Learning Consortium's past event recordings page in the next 2 to 3 days. Now, please welcome our moderator for today's session, Heather Pieper-Olson, Vice President of Institutional Advancement.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening at St. Ben's at Home. We're kicking off the 5th year of St. Ben's at Home tonight with a very special guest, Sister Karen Rose, the new Prioress of St. Benedict's Monastery. Welcome, Sister Karen.
Thank you very much, Heather.
How are you this evening?
Well, I'm very excited to be here. It's really a pleasure. I mean, as perspicacious listeners will have noticed already, I don't come from around here, so I'm not a St. Ben's alum. I come from about 3,000 miles east of here, and I lived a lot of my life in a city called Manchester, which is about 200 miles northwest of London. And I've lived in Minnesota now for about 17 years. And I have had quite a lot of connection with the college, but I'm really excited about this opportunity to connect with alums because, particularly people who weren't in school during those last 17 years. So it's a great opportunity.
Well, we are just so delighted to have you. And you already sort of hinted a little bit at it. I'm sure our listeners would love to learn a little bit more about your personal story. How did you come to know St. Benedict's Monastery?
Well, it was, I like to say that it was the Holy Spirit leading me here. I was in my late 40s by the time I ever came to St. Benedict's. And I was at a point in my life where I was really looking to simplify things and to have more time for God. And at the time, I was working as a professor of nursing at a university in England. But I did kind of have this desire for something different, although I had a very good life in many ways. I was enjoying my life, but there was just this need for something more. And it had actually struck me over probably about the past 10 or 12 years that maybe I was called to religious life, but kind of I always pushed it aside. I was like, well, why would I want to do that? And I never looked at any religious community in England or anything. But anyway, I went on a retreat to a men's Benedictine monastery in England, and I had a very good experience there.
Benedictine hospitality,
indeed,
right?
Indeed, yes. And when I got back home, I had some friends who are Loretto sisters, and I was telling them how much I'd enjoyed this retreat. And they said, oh, if you were attracted to Benedictine spirituality, you should have a look what's going on in the US. Because in England, women Benedictines are much more enclosed than they are here. And they told me to go on a website called Sisters Online, which I didn't rush to go on it, but about 2 weeks later, I was like, oh yeah, I'll just have a look. And St. Benedict's was the first site that I went into from there. And on it, I found the Studium program, which I think probably most people will be familiar with.
I think most people in the building's right around the corner from here.
And it's for scholars to come and do a project that links in some way with Benedictine values. And at the time, in the job I had a small grant for foreign travel. I had a little bit of study leave due to me, and I had never been to the United States, and I thought, oh, that would be a nice thing to do.
And so it just everything aligned, all
did.
of those things.
And so I applied to Studium, and my very first contact with the sisters was with Sister Dolores Super, who was at that time the director of Studium, and I was
many of our listeners will remember.
that's what
Sister
I
Dolores for
thought
sure.
they probably would. And, she takes credit for the fact that I'm here, so
As well she should.
if you're listening, Dolores, thank you very much. And so I came for 2 weeks in the summer of 2005.
Okay.
But I was very, I loved it here. I mean, but I never thought about joining. Though I will say that one of the sisters who was working in Studium, Sister Janice Wadle, the sister of Sister Lois Wadle, she and Sister Merle Naldi and Sister Linda Colzer and Sister Dolores made sure I had a really good time. I mean, I'm deviating now from the main story, but I'm just going to deviate. The first night that I was actually here in Studium, Sister Janice said to me, would you just like to say a few words after supper in the dining room? And I mean, she told me afterwards, she said, oh, I thought the sisters would really like to hear your accent.
Right.
So before I came to Minnesota, which I didn't really know an awful lot about, I'd looked up, some information about the area, and it said there that there was a regular train service between St. Cloud and the Twin Cities. Now, in my experience of a regular train service, that meant a train every hour on the hour.
Right. No.
Okay. So I was thinking, oh, well, I'll go into the Twin Cities for a day. I won't just work all the time I'm here. I'll see, something of the area. So I gave my little speech to the sisters saying how excited I was to be there. And I said, and I'm really hoping to explore some of the beautiful state of Minnesota while I'm here. So the next day, Sister Janice came to me and she said, we've been thinking about it. She said, and really, as you're here and you've not got a car, it would be very hard for you to see very much of Minnesota.
So you can't even get to the train. For those who don't know, there is a train from south of St. Cloud.
Yes, there is. But it goes at about, it goes one way about 5 o'clock in the morning and the other way about midnight. So she said, we've been thinking, well, we could put together a little program for you and we could take you to some places. So I kind of I did to some extent put the work aside, it has to be said. I did a bit. And anyway, they took me down to the south of the state to visit the Amish in Harmony. And we went to Duluth for the day, and then we did more local things like going to the Grasshopper Chapel and so on. And I had a really, really wonderful time. And, I did get the things of my project done that I really needed to do. I was turning a chapter of my doctoral dissertation into a paper for publication. And the doctoral dissertation was about families caring for a relative who was terminally ill at home. So just my background is nursing and healthcare, as you may have realised. So we did all these nice things, and once or twice during the 2 weeks, Sister Janice did say to me, "Why don't you join us?" Oh, she was very forthright, and I was like, and I've got to admit, I had looked up the admissions policy at the monastery on the website, but not really thinking I would ever do anything about it. And I was actually a couple of years over the age limit. So I just said to her, oh, well, I couldn't anyway, because I'm over the age limit. And she said, oh, you're vigorous. We could make exceptions.
The exception for vigor. I like it.
Yeah. So I know at the end of that 2 weeks, I do remember sitting one evening outside the Benedict Arts Centre, and it was kind of idyllic. It was a lovely summer evening, and it wasn't humid, and there was a bit of a breeze, and somebody was playing the piano in one of the practice rooms.
The days we wait all year for.
Yeah, exactly. you know, and the music was just floating out, and it was all really lovely. And it sort of passed through my mind like a cloud. This would be a lovely way of life, but it would be a very big price to pay to come and live it. And I didn't think about it anymore. But anyway, when I got back home, I felt that I felt that I had to do something to, I guess, you know, fill the need and the hunger in my life that I knew was there. And I went back to the men's Benedict in Monastery, and I made a private retreat there. And I talked to one of the monks, and I said, you know, I really feel that, you know, God is calling me to something else. And I said, but, you know, I think if I just give up my job, it feels as if I'm jumping off the edge of a cliff, you know, into the darkness. And, you know, where will I land? And, you know, will God catch me? And I found this very comforting when he said this to me. He said, well, I think God will catch you, but even if God doesn't catch you, there's always the floor. And as I say, I found that comforting. I thought, well, yeah, I'd land somewhere.
Yeah. Just being grounded, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a very practical Benedictine response too. Like,
Yes. So, and so I made the decision then that I was going to hand in my notice at work, and I actually had to give 3 months' notice in the job that I was in, so quite a long time. And I decided that I was going to, after that 3 months was over, that I wanted to take some time just to think where I wanted to go with my life and what I wanted to do. And I'd had such a good experience here at St. Benedict's that I decided to apply to come for 3 months to Studium. And I did have a project that was going to be about Hildegard of Bingen, but I also knew that I wanted to try and
do some discernment.
And so I went through the 3 months, and I got fairly close to the end of the 3 months. And I mean, I always think the kind of this was God trapping me, really, because
Not catching you, trapping you.
Well, you know, like it says I think it's in Jeremiah, you duped me, Lord, and I was duped. You know, the time that I came back for the 3 months was January, February, March. Okay. So it was winter, but it was really lovely. The temperature almost every day would be in the mid to high 20s. The sky was blue, the sun shone.
The sun is so beautiful in the cold days.
Yeah. Every so often, usually at night, there would be like a new small fall of snow, so that it was always white and lovely and beautiful. And I went on lots of long walks, and I was like, oh, this is the perfect winter climate. You see, and that happened. Well,
you did get trapped.
It was a trick. It was a trick, because it's never been like that
No.
since any winter.
Probably the only winter in the history of my life.
It was nice while it lasted. And so, you know, I got towards the end, and I thought, well, you know, I thought I'd sorted out what I wanted to do, and actually lots of little jobs that fell out of the sky that I could do online. And I thought, you know, but I know that I want to stay connected with St. Benedict. And so I thought I would like to become an oblate. And I made an appointment to go and see Sister Hélène Mercier, who at that time was the oblate director. And I explained to her why I thought I wanted to be an oblate. And she said to me, tell me, have you ever talked to the director of vocation?
Just kind of kept coming back and coming back
Yeah.
to that, right?
And it was a really kind of strange and sacred experience. I felt as if something sort of imploded in my mind, and that there was nothing between me and God anymore. And I kind of just knew that I had to take it forward. And so I did go and talk with Sister Mary Catherine Hollicky, who was then director of vocations. And she said, you know, I think there is something to explore here, but I think what you need to do is you need to go home for 6 months and just live your regular life. And if you still feel like that at the end of 6 months, then come back here and make a living, because she said living as part of the community will be a different experience from being a member of Studium.
Right.
And so I did go home, and I lived for 6 months, and I had these little jobs and I was able to simplify my life. But at the end of the 6 months, I did want to come back here. And so I made a 3-month live-in. That would have been September to December 2006, I think. And I was really just very certain that I felt called to the life. And I think I visited again over Easter of the next year, 2007, and for a little bit in the summer of 2007, and then I entered in the fall of 2007.
And the rest is history.
Yes. And I've got to say, having entered the formation period of being a postulant and a novice, I was really just so very sure that I was called. And it was difficult leaving home, and it was very difficult leaving people. But it wasn't really as difficult at the time because I felt so sure that I was being called to do that. I mean, now sometimes I look back and I think, I can't believe I did that.
Because you did, you leapt, you jumped, you stepped off the ledge. And I didn't. I feel bad now because sometimes I think, I didn't take enough notice of what my leaving England meant to some of the people that I was leaving behind there. Mm-hmm.
And now I think, I just wish I'd been more sympathetic, but But anyway, I am glad I'm here. I don't regret the decision. So, as I say, my early formation was absolutely fine, and I really, really enjoyed it. But I didn't really ever have any doubts, I think, until I made first profession, and then I was like, I really need to think about this carefully. But I was still very sure God had called me. I think the time it felt most doubtful to me was about 6 weeks after I'd made perpetual profession, which was in 2012. And I'm kind of like, I've done this, and what have I done?
Yeah.
What now? What am I going to do? And and I don't think anything. I don't think it would have helped to have a longer time in first profession or formation or anything. I think you can't. I guess it's probably like when you get married, that you can't really prepare for what it's going to be like until you've actually done it.
That's true. I mean, I think all of those big steps really are. You see people going through it. You've had a chance to watch, but nobody really knows what the future holds in that relationship.
Yeah.
Truly being in relationship with one another is challenging. So I just want to acknowledge we are having some technical difficulties. We know folks are having some trouble hearing. We are recording, and so many of you will see this through the recording, but we're going to keep going.
Oh, right. Well,
okay. That's great. So you've recently transitioned. You've taken another big leap. You have transitioned into a pretty important role, and that's the role of Prioress of the Monastery. What is it like to lead the community at this time?
It's challenging, but I think overall I would say that I feel very excited about it. It sounds trite to say this, but I feel the world is in such a broken and bad state, and that there's a real need for people to give witness of living a more loving, caring, person-centered way of life. And I guess we don't always succeed, but
we are humans, but we try. The
and that's the thing.
intentionality.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I am excited about it.
So you said it's challenging. But what are some of the challenges, opportunities, worries, wows that you've encountered in your few short months in this role?
It's really interesting. I think the things that have sort of hit me forcibly. Some of our listeners may know that we did have quite a lot of deaths, like really early on after I've been installed. I think we had 5 sisters die within the space of a month, and I wasn't expecting that. And I think particularly with the very first one, I was just so overwhelmed because at the wake services that we have, the prioress presides, and the guests and the community walk in, and the casket goes in, and the prioress follows the casket, and it was totally not about me. It was totally about what the role of the prioress means, and the prioress represents Christ within the community. And I sort of had this tremendous sense of that as the prioress, I was representing everything that this woman had given her life to.
Oh,
And just
that's very profound. I mean, what an overwhelming sort
it was,
of that, right?
it really was. And I guess I wasn't. I thought the things that would be overwhelming to me were the amount of sort of business things and administration things that might come in. And indeed, they sometimes are overwhelming. But I don't think those are the things that really affect me deep in my core. Another thing that's very, very significant for me is on a Saturday evening, we have vigil.
Mm-hmm.
And the prioress reads the gospel for Sunday at Saturday evening vigil. And so the prioress's seat in the oratory is right at the back on one side. And so you have to walk all down the steps and then bow to each side of the oratory and then walk round to the ambo. And it's another time when I just really have, it feels very lonely doing that walk down the steps. And it's not, I don't mean, it's not unpleasant, but it just has this sense of the sort of, the grace and the significance of that moment of then going and reading the words of Christ.
Yeah.
And particularly because it's to my community, and because the prioress does stand in the role of Christ in the community. And so I do find that a very profound weekly occurrence.
And it's every week. Too.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's why don't you talk? I mean, you just shared a little bit about what you know. Every Saturday there's vigil. So tell us a little bit more about life at the monastery. Those of us who know and love you and love the sisters and are close and are here get to visit and pray with you and get glimpses of daily life, share meals, share conversation with the sisters. But many of our listeners don't have that opportunity or may have very outdated memories. We were talking about that earlier actually before we started. So what does daily life look like in the monastery right now?
Well, I think, for many people, it would, I think if you just came and observed, you would think it was very different from how it was, say, 50 years ago. Probably the most obvious thing is we're not wearing habits. And the liturgy of the hours is in English, not Latin, and all those kind of things. But I think actually, because Benedictines are part of a 1,500-year-old tradition, all the things that make us fundamentally Benedictine are still there. So, I mean, I know there was a time when prayers were 7 times a day, and now they're 3 times a day. But I mean, that's still probably one of the key things in our life. Sharing the common table is a key thing in our life. And I think really the whole thing of just being in community together and trying to care for one another. Because I always feel that the key message in the Rule of Benedict is about love. And, there are prescriptions about how you live your life and what you do. But I always think running through it is that key message of love and care for other people,
right?
And I think we do try to do that, But I mean, there is definitely a variety in the way that people live their monastic life, and as I have heard said, when you've met one Benedictine sister, you've met one Benedictine sister, and I think that is true. I mean, we have the early risers amongst us who get up at 4 o'clock. Which to me is still the middle of the night, and then we have people like me who are kind of like, I get up at 6:36, which is kind of like the latest that I can get up
And
get
actually make
dressed
prayers.
and actually make prayers.
So, how do you solve conflict? Living in community is one of those things. I think there's this perception that, it's when people don't know a lot about intentional living communities, we assume everything's just so, so sunshiny all the time. But I had the pleasure and joy of working with Sister Coleman. It's one of the first things she said is we're human and we have conflict. What we do is intentionally deal with that and live with one another.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, I mean, it can be really annoying when people sort of say, oh, it must be wonderful to live in a place where like everything is so peaceful all the time. And I know you should just try it. And indeed, we are open to vocations, so if you want to, try it. I mean, I think the thing is that you have to learn to accept that everybody is an individual and that they bring themselves. So I'm going to use myself as an example here because I don't want to appear to criticize anybody else. Okay, I am not a very tidy person. And I was not very tidy when I had my own home. I always have like piles of books around and magazines and
You're a faculty member.
Yeah. And, and I mean, now in my bedroom, I think I have 3 bookcases full of books, and so why don't you just get rid of some of them? I'm like, no, I'm insecure if I don't have all these books around me, So I'm just like that, and I think it's probably difficult for some people who are very tidy and minimalists to live with somebody like me who isn't. But I think you find ways to just accept that's how that person is, and I mean there are some things in our communal life, I guess, that we have to agree on and do in a similar kind of way. But there is room still to be yourself, to have your own personality, and so I consider my bedroom to be my sanctuary,
Your place.
and it's full of books.
You mentioned, you were talking about love too, and I think it's bringing love to these relationships too. But Sister Michaela shares an idea that we've talked about for sure as well. But none of us actually know where it came from. We can't attribute it to the right source. But that idea that love is both affection and accountability.
Yes,
it's not just this blind love. It's also that sort of understanding you and who you are, but then also knowing there's probably those moments where your mess can't kind of go outside the confines of your sanctuary.
Yeah, that's it. You've just got to try to, I think, to be aware of what other people's needs are.
Right.
And I think so that it's a two-way thing that, individually, like I say, I'm trying to be aware of what other people's needs are and how my actions might affect how they feel about things. But they're also trying to do the same thing. So but there's a lot of adjusting and knocking, rough edges, and so it is quite challenging. And I don't. Well, I mean, I'm relatively new in the community, but I mean, as far as I can see, there doesn't really come a point where you get it perfect.
No,
because there's always something new coming up.
Right.
So, but I guess by trying to live it in a way that takes into account how other people are feeling, and there are a lot of them, it can help you to grow in love for others.
Yeah.
I mean, I think as well, one of the things that I feel is it can be a big temptation to be judgmental about others when you're living with other people. And I really feel that that's something, well, certainly that I have to strive against, because actually that creates friction within the community.
Right. We are a residential college, right?
Yeah.
It's a thing that we continue to feel. We don't ask our students to live here and live in community just because. We do feel this is an important lesson in we know that part of our Benedictine heritage, and that's just so essential and
Yes.
important for sure. So tell us a little bit, I'm sure, I know so many of our listeners are so curious, how many sisters are still living in, at the monastery here, and then also at St. Scholastica?
Well, I would say there are probably about 70 sisters at St. Scholastica's. Some of them are actually working and helping there. So it's and in total we have 148 sisters at the moment.
148.
148, yes.
I did get the note that our audio is working now. We had some technical difficulties. I just want to remind everyone that we did record this and we will share it. So anything you've missed, we promise we will catch you up to. But we're just talking a little bit about life at the monastery today. So how many oblates are currently?
We have 450 oblates worldwide.
Worldwide. That's amazing.
I mean, we have some oblates in Canada and in Germany. Yeah,
that's amazing. Is that partly just due to Zoom and sort of technology will allow, or do you have folks who are actually constantly coming back over and trying to engage?
It's Zoom has helped those people who live distant because we have oblates all over the US as well. So Zoom has helped those people who live distantly to stay more connected. Because we have, for instance, we have an oblate renewal day, which takes place in the fall, and then we have 4 oblate Sundays throughout the year where there's a guest speaker, and the oblates join us for lunch and conversation and so on. And I think Zoom has helped people living distantly to be part of that, in that they can hear the talks and so on, and be part of the after talk discussion. But I mean, most of our oblates at some point will be coming physically to the monastery. I mean, I had one oblate who's a friend who lives in Germany who came over for my installation, and another oblate who came from Tennessee, and
wow.
So
it's amazing. So how are you thinking about in this role, and you and the sisters and the leadership of how are you all thinking about and planning for the future of the community, knowing that the number of vowed sisters grows smaller and the age of the community grows older? How are you caring for one another?
I think we have to be really aware of some of the losses that sisters, are experiencing, and especially some of the sisters who've been in the community a long time, who've seen it, go from a community of over 1,000 members to a community of under 150. And the kind of, the changes that have happened. So I think a lot of it is just being aware that it's not always easy for some people, and there might, everybody's got a different experience and so on. I think that one of the things that happened at the election time was that I think we all realized how blessed we still are as a community, because we have so many able, capable women who, are dedicated to community living. And so, that was a wonderful experience to look at it from the, a position of strength, yes. And I think it goes back to the whole thing of, this is one of the ways in which we're called to love and care for one another in this day and age. And I've got to say, I don't myself particularly worry about declining numbers. I would love for more women to come and join us, because I think it's not a peaceful life that has no problems with it. It's a life that, if you want to live communally and to face the challenges that come with that, is actually very satisfying and energizing. So,
filled with vigor,
that's right. But my feeling is it isn't really about the numbers. It's about, like, how do we live this life now, so that we, in this day and age, live it to its full extent and be the best women we are and have the best impact that we can on the local community and the broader world.
So let's talk a little bit about that. The Sisters of the Order of St. Benedict have a legacy of meeting the needs of central Minnesota since the earliest days of your arrival here. So tell us a little bit about the ministries that you're offering now and how you're serving the needs of the local community.
Well, of course, we continue to have, our spirituality center, and we also continue to have studium, and we're expecting those to continue for some time in the future. And, we're very blessed by the sisters who participate in that and keep things running. We do have other ministries like, the Girls God and Good Time camps.
Camps are very popular.
Yeah. And, we have our kind of historical ministry, the archives and the museum, and also the gift shop. And I'm really sorry to anybody that I've missed out on this. There's lots of people doing lots of ministries. But one of the things that we're really excited about at the moment is we have hired a director of social justice ministries who is in fact going to start on Monday, October 23rd. And the plan there is, there are fewer of us who can be actually out in the community doing things. So we want to be working with people, and her remit is really to there are some ministries that we're already doing, like we do a clothing and household goods project for people who are in need. But really, she's going to be making connections with the local community, with schools, and we really hope CSB is going to be involved.
Of course, I'm sure our students are already lining up to do work. They're so engaged. It's a great place to intern.
So, we're really excited about that. We're looking to do things. Can we find ways to work with volunteers so that if there's an older person who needs their backyard doing, we can find the volunteer to make that happen.
Sort of those connections.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
that's really exciting. So Monday, she starts Monday.
She starts Monday, yes.
That's fantastic. I'm sure folks will want to learn more, so we'll continue to share opportunities for folks to get engaged. Our alums will definitely want to know more and hear about how this is going. So just one last question is sort of about, sort of the monastery today is, how are you thinking about and planning for space needs in the future?
Well, we are getting smaller, and so we are in the midst of planning a right-sized monastery. And a lot of things are still in the air about this at the moment. But we are going to be building anew on this campus here at St. Benedict. We predict that we're going to need St. Scholastic for quite some time, and so we're planning to be using that for a while. But we really feel the buildings that we're in at the moment are starting to get noticeably too big for us, and so we feel that the right thing to do is to build a new monastery, which is when we build it, I think we're looking not to house everybody who's there right now, but sort of looking several years down the line that it'll be the right size then. So some of us will continue to live in the old monastery, and we're also looking for ways to repurpose some of our buildings so that something worthwhile can happen to them. So
always so planful. So
yes.
Great. And there's lots, I know there'll be lots more for folks they'll be very curious as your plans come into fruition.
Exactly.
A little bit clearer.
We will be sharing them, but everything's very indefinite at the moment. We have nice ideas.
Well, we can't wait to see. We too are going through strategic planning,
yes.
as you know. We've got lots of nice ideas. So we'll be bringing these to bear at the same time, which will be terrific. So let's talk actually a little bit let's shift gears a little bit and talk about what I, and I'm biased, do think is one of your greatest accomplishments as the Sisters of the Order of St. Benedict, the College of St. Benedict. So what is the Sisters' ongoing role with the college? We know you established the college in 1913 and worked to separate the monastery and college, and by incorporating the College of St. Benedict as its own corporate entity in 1961. But how are the Sisters still involved with the college today?
Well, we are on the board of trustees. We have members there, and we are also corporate members. So that's sort of the official links. And then we have the Benedictine Friends program, which pairs first years students with a sister, but many of them stay on after the first
Those
year.
relationships are very, very profound for our students, for sure.
Yeah. You know, I mean, just recently there's been a luminous lodge that the sisters put on out at the lodge in the woods, which is it's kind of a retreat experience for students. And I think there were 10 or 12 who came on the last one. And
I have to learn more about that.
Oh yeah, it's a really nice thing. You know, I think somebody gives a talk on a Benedictine value, and there's time for reflection and meditation, and then there's just some good fun. And
so how has your relationship with St. John's Abbey evolved through all of this work of strong integration that we keep talking about so much?
Well, I'm not speaking from a position of experience here, because I was not the prioress at the time that all the strong integration work was going on. I mean, I'm very grateful that kind of such a good legacy has been left from the work that Sister Susan Rudolph did during that time. My sense is that I think probably both the sisters and the monks at St. John's have probably come to a greater understanding and appreciation of how the other institution works. So I think it probably has been something that has brought us closer together.
That's great. So as you're both corporate members, and now really are corporate members of the institutions and this. So what does that mean to be a corporate member? Corporate sponsor, really.
A corporate sponsor.
Yeah.
It means, I mean, because there are the corporate members for St. John's who are all monks, and there are corporate members for St. Benedict's who are all sisters. But then we do sometimes meet together. I mean, I think it is a sacred charge, because it's about ensuring, the Catholic Benedictine tradition of this college, which I think as Sister Coleman, as you said, Sister Coleman said, the world changes, and so you can't just say it's done now and that's it.
It's the way it was when Benedict and 1500 years ago.
So I find it something that I really do want to preserve that legacy, because I think that's been very important in turning out the kind of women who are Bennies.
Absolutely. How do you see the Benedictine charism really playing out in our students today? Those that you engage with, or what you hear about from others?
I mean, I honestly think that the students here are some of the most, they really give a sense of caring about what's happening in the world. They're full of energy, like, for making a difference, and I just think very open to new ideas and to exploration. I think they're really hospitable. I know certainly not all the population is Catholic, but I think there's a real sense amongst the students of wanting to search for something deeper, and that one of the reasons that they choose St. Benedict's is because it's a place where you can explore your spirituality, and
what drew you here at the beginning.
Yes.
A place to discern and think.
Yes. And I think many of the students are drawn here for a similar
agree.
kind of reason.
I think in some ways, I think that's true of our employees as well.
Yeah, I
say
do.
that for myself, but I
Yes.
think that's true. It's a place where you know you can make a difference, but you also can find yourself. And
Yes.
find yourself, what do they say? That the best way to find yourself is to be in service of others.
Yes,
And that's
indeed.
very true
Yeah.
here. Absolutely. So many of our listeners know that St. Ben's and the sisters have been working with our Native Nations neighbors to repair relationships and harms that came from the operations of industrial schools. Could you share a little update on that work? And I will say I'm familiar. I had the honor and pleasure of serving with you and Sister Pat and Sister Michaela and many of our colleagues on that, as part of that work.
Yes. Well, I really feel that this is one of the most important topics within the 6 years that I'm going to be prioress. I always find it a little bit difficult because being English, it's kind of like, it feels sometimes like, oh, I'm commenting on somebody else's history. But having said that, I feel the Forced Assimilation Act was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I really regret that the sisters were part of the system that the federal government created, to subdue Indian culture. And I guess I would say I don't feel personally responsible, but I feel a collective responsibility because our community was a part of that. And I guess, the last time I was talking with Jamie Arsenault, who's the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer at White, I said, I have a real regret for the past, but we can't change the past, but we can work together, hopefully, to build a better future. And, that's really the position that I think we are coming from at the monastery, that we want to do something now. And it's well, it is a difficult situation in a lot of ways, because I know that there were many sisters who worked on the reservations and in the schools who really loved the people of White Earth and of Red Lake, and that there were many strong relationships that were formed, which are still being lived out
Absolutely.
today.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that side of it too. But there's also this other side that, we regret the reason that we were there in the first place. And I just hope that we can find ways to work with the people of White Earth and with the college to.
I agree. I think it's probably among the most profound things I've been able to be a part of in my time. And I think it's such an opportunity for us to. Jamie reminds us all the time that this is a model. And I think the sisters in so many ways demonstrate what it looks like to love, that accountability and affection, right?
Yeah.
And that's really what we're sort of looking for here, is how can we bring revitalization, healing, opportunity,
right.
strength, and partnership.
And and I think one of the key things that I feel is there's a real need for us to try to be able to build trust between the sisters and the people of White Earth now, because it's very hard to move forward if we don't trust one another.
Right.
And I realize that's harder for them because they've had the past experience, and so they might feel there isn't a lot of reason to trust us. But on the other hand, I'm hoping that some of the relationships that were built, that there will be people there who will say it's worth trying. It's worth.
It is worth doing this work.
Yes.
Yeah, it is worth doing.
Yeah,
We're going to take a little bit of a leap off a cliff here and see if we can. We'll see where we find. But if nothing else, we'll find the floor.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're getting kind of close to our time for sure. But I just want to leave you with I'm going to ask you one last question. Then we want to hear from our audience for sure. So if you haven't entered a question, please do now. But I see you're wearing the scarf that represents the gift from the sisters. And I know that the College of St. Benedict truly is one of the most profound legacies of the sisters. And we talked that the stained glass that is represented on that scarf, we talked at that time at the moment of the centennial that the alumni were carrying the torch,
Yes.
carrying that torch forward for the sisters. So what is it that what is it that you see and you hope that our alums can carry forward from this moment on behalf of the sisters and the legacy? We stand on your shoulders. So what would you like us to do as we move forward?
I really hope that, you will continue to have, an awareness of God in working in your lives, and to show that light forward to the world,
Letting our light shine.
Yeah, you are, that you can be beacons of light and love. I mean, that's my most profound hope. And I think, that is shown in the hospitality of people who've attended the College of St. Benedict. I'm often taken, because I worked in mission advancement before I was the prioress, and so I have the privilege of working with a lot of supporters and donors, many of whom are alums of the college, and I'm always really impressed by the attitude of gratitude that many of them exhibit, for the education that they had here, and how that's taken them through life, and how they've seen the Benedictine values that they learned there. Those have been the way that what they've tried to pass on to their family. And I really hope that continues. I think it's a wonderful legacy.
It is a wonderful legacy. We will work to continue to carry it forward with you and with the sisters. So do we have any questions from the audience, Lisa?
We do. So this one's from Anne from the class of 99. She notes that a lot of alumni have participated in the Benedictine Friends program. So how is that program doing? Is there still a lot of involvement?
Yes, there is. I mean, just this past week, there were 2 s'mores nights, both of which were very well attended. I mean, there's every year, I would say at least a third of the first year class signs up for Benedictine Friends, and it's still alive and well. Sister Bridget Powers now looks after it.
An alumna from the class of 2004, is that right? I say that without any confidence.
Yeah, something like that.
I say that with no confidence, but I think it's 2004.
Yes. So yes, I think it's around that date. So, yes, and I mean, well, I was just talking to one sister today, Sister Alice, and she was telling me now how she's got 19 Benedictine friends at the moment, because she gets some Benedictine friends, and then they bring more of their friends, and so it grows and it grows.
So there's unofficial and official numbers
there are.
Potentially of the Benedictine Friends program. That's fantastic. So, do you have any other questions, Lisa?
Yes. Oh, Anne already also had another question.
Okay.
She loves the addition of a social justice director. What are some hopes you see once you add this role?
I mean, one of my big hopes for it is that it's going to be a very real way for the sisters and the students at the college to work together on something that is really worthwhile and makes a difference in our local community. So that's one of my big hopes. I mean, I also hope that it's going to be a way of reaching underserved groups of people, and we also, we'd also like to get involved with some of the local churches and see if we can work with them. So I think I see it as one of my hopes is about bringing different groups together who have common purposes, and maybe together we can be stronger.
I think that's great, and it's very in keeping with the tradition of the sisters too. I think we've talked before, we've shared, thinking about the hospital, right? Sort of seeing a need in the community before the community even knew that it needed. It's very on brand for the Sisters of the Order of St. Benedict, for sure. So, do we have any other questions, Lisa?
I do. Amy asks, what's the most challenging thing about being the new prioress?
Well, this is really quite a personal thing. One of the things that it sort of happens quite often, is the way you have to change your mood really quickly from one thing to another, because you can have something that happen, like a sister comes and tells you something that's either sad or that's challenging for her. And so, you're sympathetic and you're feeling for her, and it's kind of, it's maybe a little bit sad, or, and then sort of like the next thing that happens is something that's, really nice. Like, for instance, yesterday, we had an employee recognition event, and it's like, I find it really hard having to change my mood from one thing to the complete opposite, with like 2 minutes in between.
Well, I think too, it's the sisters, and I don't know, maybe you know better than I do, but if you could share, I think not everyone really knows that the sisters are very intentional about the length of time that one serves, and then sort of what you do after service, and sort of that transition. And there's so much about leadership and leadership transition I think folks can learn, but also how one cares for oneself in those roles. You want to share a little bit about that?
Well, self-care is a big thing for me. It's one of the things I go on about a lot, and so I have to lead by example on this. So, for instance, I have instituted that every sister should take a personal desert day every month, where they do something just that is renewing to them, whatever that may be. I of course have to take a desert day because of that. That's really nice. And I do think it's really important. I do try to look after my physical health. I try and get my 10,000 steps every day. And I am actually doing a swimming, an aerobics, water aerobics class.
You do that here, or
did that here at CSB. It was offered as an option for sisters. So there's 5 of us that go to it.
I love it. And those are the kinds of things that will be really important for you. So as I asked that, it's 6 years, correct?
Yes, it is,
and so then, so what will Sister Susan do in this first year?
Sister Susan is on sabbatical at the moment. Though she has recently had a working part of her sabbatical. We have it is one of our daughter houses in Puerto Rico, which celebrated its 75th anniversary about 2 weeks ago. And Sister Susan and 2 other sisters went out there to celebrate with the Puerto Rico sisters. So that was a little mission that she had.
Sounds like a good one, though. I think hopefully there was a beach and it was nice.
And it was really good, actually, because one of the goals that she set herself during this year is that she wanted to learn Spanish. And so I actually sent a tribute to the sisters, which one of our sisters who speaks fluent Spanish actually translated into Spanish, but Sister Susan was able to deliver it in the Spanish. So
fantastic. All right, so I think that's time. I'm getting the sign. It's time to wrap up. So I just want to thank you so much for this time and for being here. And, really the St. Benedict's Monastery is the foundation of the college. It's the reason we exist. And it's the reason that more than 26,000 people all over the course of that have received an education, and that over the course of 110 years, and we are celebrating 110 years this year, have received an education because of the vision and determination of the sisters. And I just want to say thank you on their behalf. So now I know that I speak for so many alumni when I say that our hearts are full of gratitude for your leadership and the gift that you've given us as the College of St. Benedict. Audience, thank you too for joining us tonight. You can always learn more about what's happening at the Monastery and St. Ben's by visiting both of our websites. Lisa will put those, they'll be shared for you, or do you have those on the screen?
They will be shared in the email that we'll send everyone.
We will share those in the email later. Thank you for that. And please join us in November for the next episode of St. Ben's at Home. We'll be talking with President Brian Brees, and that's always an exciting conversation. We're working to finalize the date on his busy calendar, so please stay tuned for that announcement. And now here's the last word from Lisa Miller. Have a great night.
Yeah. Again, this concludes tonight's episode of St. Ben's at Home, but please plan to join us later this semester when Brian Brees will talk with Heather about the latest news from campus. We're still working on determining a date for that, but we will get that out and market it to all of you as soon as we have more specifics on that. But thank you for attending, and we hope you enjoyed this time with Sister Karen and Heather. Thank you.